pasión el amor, lo que hace el otro bien. Busque el amor en ti, se multiplica si lo repartís. Busque el amor en ti, solo el que ama puede ser feliz. Busque el amor en ti, se multiplica si lo repartís. Busque el amor en ti, solo el que ama puede ser feliz. Busque el amor en ti, en ti.
Good morning. My name is David Jones, and my pronouns are he, him, and his. I'm a member of the worship committee, and I'll be your worship associate this morning. Whoever you are, whomever you love, wherever you are in your life's journey, you are welcome here. Welcome to this virtual service of the Unitarian Society of New Haven. We are a diverse, multi-generational faith community that inspires lives of compassion and generosity, nurtures spiritual growth, cultivates transformative connections, and creates a more just world. We covenant together to create and nurture a culture of respect and kindness, and to engage in the spiritual and everyday practice of loving more generously. This is a congregation that believes Black lives matter, that every person has the right to affirm their own gender identity, and that all people are inherently worthy. We acknowledge that our sanctuary sits on the land traditionally that of the Quinnipiac and other Native people. As a congregation, we seek to heal the wounds of the past and the present and ongoing work of reconciliation. If you're joining us for the first time, we're so glad you chose to spend this time with us. We meet electronically for now, but we know we will be together again in person. The email address of the membership team is on the screen, and you can visit usnh.org to find out more about us. There will be a Zoom meeting for newcomers immediately following this service. One announcement we want to highlight is the Covenantal Relations Committee has invited Jackie Trimble Shapiro to lead a community circle at 11:30 this morning after the service. The worship theme for February is the Beloved Community, and discussion will focus on our personal experiences with elements of the eighth principle. Also, the Lunar New Year begins February 12th, Year of the Ox, time for moon cakes. All of my favorite holidays are connected to food. Now let us settle in, take a relaxing breath, and let us worship together.
It starts with a spark, a quick flash that makes you doubt your vision. But then a tiny ember glows on the braided twine and brings a flame to life. Soon you find a candle sitting on a table, desolate until its wick touches yours. And suddenly the brightness doubles. In an instant, the warmth has grown. This intensified glow draws others like a beacon. 5, 10, 50, hundreds maybe. Not moths bent on self-destruction, but fellow travelers seeking the road ahead. The people begin to move forward. No matter how far the line stretches, no one is left to fend for themselves. Everyone makes progress, or no one does. In the distance, bands of other beacons now beckon, proof of other sparks that became blazes. The air crackles with anticipation as everyone approaches the center. There, the scales are balanced. There, the broken are healed. Now, you know what it means to be love. Now, you know how to illuminate the sky. Welcome to this sacred time together.
Our chalice lighting today is by Christine Robinson. We gather this hour as people of faith, with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope, as a sign of our quest for truth and meaning and celebration of the life we share together.
As tranquil streams that meet and merge and flow as one to seek the sea, our kindred hearts and minds unite to build a church that shall be free, free from the bonds that bind the mind to rebel thought and lifeless greed, free from the social code that fails to serve the cause of human need. A freedom that reveals the past, but trusts the dawning future more, and bids the soul in search of truth adventure boldly and explore. Prophetic church, the future waits your liberating ministry. Go forward in the power of love, proclaim the truth that makes us free.
I spent the summer of 1998 in a small town in the West African nation of Ghana, a town called Jankufa. I was working with a mixed group of Ghanaian, European, and North American volunteers to replant a section of rainforest that had been clear-cut, all the trees cut down, by a Dutch lumber company. We were planting teak trees. Now, the reason we planted teak trees is because they grow quickly. They can be sustainably farmed for wood, and they grow back from the same set of roots when they're cut down. Also, they can be cut even as the natural forest grows back around them. Now, while my mission and the mission of the volunteers with me was tree planting and environmental justice, I had no idea when I arrived that I was also going to learn a valuable life lesson about beloved community from the people of Jankufa. It's a lesson that still strongly resonates in my heart and my mind even today. All of my memories from that time overflow with kind interactions, curiosity, laughter, bumbling through learning some basic tree language, and deep, unequivocal welcome. But one day in particular will never, ever be forgotten. It was a sad day, the day after a young man who had 2 children had passed away unexpectedly. Everyone in Jankufa was shocked and heartbroken, but their collective path forward was clear, understood, and embraced by all. The morning of that day began with all families arriving at the home of this man's family with gifts of food, clothing, and other necessities. Now, I recognize this practice from my own culture, in which lovingly wrapped gifts of food arrive so that those mourning the death of a loved one don't have to worry about cooking and know that they are supported. But what happened next kept me in quiet awe for some time. In fact, long after I had returned to the United States. That morning, the entire population of Jankufa, some 600 people, gathered around the home of the chief, just as they did whenever change came. They shared silence for some time, and then they began to talk. My friend Joseph, who often translated for my group of volunteers, explained that everyone was there to collectively work out how to fill the spaces that this young man had left behind in the community. Who was going to do his share of the farm work? Who was going to ensure that his children and sister received clean water from the well that was on the west side of town? Water to be used for drinking, for washing dishes, for bathing, and for laundry. Who was going to maintain their house? Who was going to walk the children to school? Who would bring cassava roots and cook and mash them into paste to make delicious fufu? The questions came quickly, and as each question was asked, different people around this huge gathering jumped to volunteer. Between finding people to do the work that he had done and finding others to care for those that he had helped care for, a clear picture of beloved community, a community steeped in collective thinking, came into focus. I have often asked myself, what does a beloved community where nonviolence is normal, where kindness and caring are woven into the fabric of daily existence, what does that look like in reality? I'm very familiar with what it does not look like. In my own culture, I have received a clear message that I am responsible for myself first, for my family second, and my community third. Within this way of thinking, when life changes, such as an illness, a death, the loss of a job, or some similar change happens, it can often leave individuals or whole families feeling cold and alone. The fear of what happens to us when we lose our self-reliance is very real, and it can push us to do some hurtful things to others in the name of keeping ourselves safe. Some of us try to answer the fear with things like insurance policies or hired helpers. But I believe that while self-reliance is terrific at making us individually strong and individually independent, on the level of community, it leaves a massive hole in the shape of our responsibility to one another. This is where the memory of that one day in Jankufa inspires me to change my thinking, to think just a little bit differently. I start asking myself, what can I do to fill in the empty spaces in families, in communities? What can we do? If we think and act in a way more focused on healing wounds in the community, rather than asking first what it can do for me, will it make the community more beloved? I don't know, but I owe it to Joseph, to the memory of that loving father, to the people of Jankufa, and to this beloved community to find out.
Hello, my name is Kathy Jackson, and I'm a member of the Pastoral Care Team. In this spiritual community, we remind ourselves each week that joy and woe are woven fine. Some of us bear burdens made lighter as others help us carry it. Some of us hold joys that shine more brightly as others reflect our delight. With sadness, I share with you that Susan Meredith's friend and colleague, Marcia Greenbaum, died of COVID-19 last month. Susan says that Marcia leaves a large empty space in our hearts. Let's together take a moment to bear witness to all that the people of this congregation are holding in their hearts. Together, let us give thanks for this community of care.
Today's words were written by Susan Magan. You are not alone, dear one. You are among all those who have walked this straining path before. You are not alone. You are with the wisdom of all your ancestors who live, if nowhere else, in the cells of your body and breath, remembering you from the very beginning. You are not alone. You are with us. We are right there, smiling and shining upon you like starlight, holding and surrounding you in silence and song, forever renewing our faith in you. Let us hold a time of silence together. Amen, and blessed be.
Hello, my name is Frida Masden. I joined USNH in 2017. Many years ago, I came to America as a refugee from Cuba, keenly aware of the forces of oppression and exploitation that comes from unchecked gun violence. Seeing throngs of people using firearms, both to foment and suppress a revolution, had a long-lasting effect on me. I decided to work to control the proliferation of firearms in the US, especially assault weapons. My activism found a home with the Preventing Gun Violence Task Force. Last July, a fellow Cuban American, Esther Salas, the district attorney of New Jersey, suffered the unspeakable loss of her 22-year-old son from a gunman posing as a delivery driver. As with so many others, it was too easy for him to procure his weapon and to take the life of an innocent boy. Thanks to the support of my friends at the Preventing Gun Violence Force, I was able to channel my outrage by working to educate the public about the need to pass and enforce laws that limit gun ownership. Judge Salas will continue her lifetime position, touched by the outpouring of support from thousands of people, including us at USNH. As our work preventing gun violence continues, we invite you to join us in partnership with Connect and the Anti-Racism Task Force for a Zoom discussion on February 16th with Reverend Odell Montgomery Cooper on the personal and community impact of gun violence and the social stigma of mental health in communities of color. Details are in the newsletter. Thank you.
Our community continues while we remain apart, and the need for ongoing support continues as well. While the music plays, I urge you to consider navigating to the usnh.org website and making a donation. Donations can also be sent by U.S. mail to the Unitarian Society of New Haven, 700 Hartford Turnpike, Hamden, Connecticut, 06517. The offering will now be gratefully received. The reading this morning is an excerpt from The King Philosophy, Nonviolence 365 by the King Center. A note before I begin. This reading includes the gendered language of brotherhood and sisterhood. Even as we acknowledge this limitation, I invite you to hear the larger kinship explicitly embedded in Dr. King's vision. The beloved community is a term that was first coined in the early days of the 20th century by the philosopher-theologian Josiah Rice, who founded the Fellowship of Reconciliation. However, it was Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., also a member of the Fellowship of Reconciliation, who popularized the term and invested it with a deeper meaning, which has captured the imagination of people of goodwill all over the world. For Dr. King, the beloved community was not a lofty utopian goal to be confused with the rapturous image of the peaceable kingdom in which lions and lambs coexist in idyllic harmony. Rather, the beloved community was for him a realistic, achievable goal that could be attained by a critical mass of people committed to and trained in the philosophy and methods of nonviolence. Dr. King's beloved community is a global vision in which all people can share in the wealth of the earth. In the beloved community, poverty, hunger, and homelessness will not be tolerated because international standards of human decency will not allow it. Racism and all forms of discrimination, bigotry, and prejudice will be replaced by an all-inclusive spirit of sisterhood and brotherhood. In the beloved community, international disputes will be resolved by peaceful conflict resolution and reconciliation of adversaries instead of military power. Love and trust will triumph over fear and hatred. Peace with justice will prevail over war and military conflict. Dr. King's beloved community was not devoid of interpersonal, group, or international conflict. Instead, he recognized that conflict was an inevitable part of human experience. But he believed that conflicts could be resolved peacefully and adversaries could be reconciled through a mutual, determined commitment to nonviolence. No conflict, he believed, need erupt in violence, and all conflicts in the beloved community should end with reconciliation of adversaries cooperating together in a spirit of friendship and goodwill. In a July 13, 1966 article in Christian Century magazine, Dr. King affirmed the ultimate goal inherent in the quest for the beloved community. I do not think of political power as an end. Neither do I think of economic power as an end. They are ingredients in the objective that we seek in life. And I think that the end of that objective is a truly brotherly society, the creation of the beloved community. Thus ends this morning's reading.
What is the beloved community? It's a vision of the world in which people are treated with fairness and have their needs met, no matter who they are, where they're from, whom they love, or what they look like. The beloved community is rooted in the principles of nonviolence, or what Gandhi called satyagraha, soul force. But I will talk more about that next week. As we heard in today's reading, the phrase was coined by Josiah Royce, but popularized and deepened by the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. For Dr. King, the major obstacles to the beloved community are what he called the triplets of evil: poverty, racism, and militarism. In the language of his day, Dr. King wrote, "Equality with whites will not solve the problems of either whites or Negroes if it means equality in a world society stricken by poverty and in a universe doomed to extinction by war." In Where Do We Go From Here, Chaos or Community, Dr. King asserted that by eliminating poverty, a host of other concerns would fall along with it: homelessness, malnutrition, infant mortality, and so on. At one point, he talks about Hyman Bookbinder, at the time the assistant director of the Office of Economic Opportunity, who wasn't fazed by the long-term costs of eliminating poverty. Bookbinder declared, "The poor can stop being poor if the rich are willing to become even richer at a slower rate." I'm going to repeat that because it's quite an extraordinary statement. The poor can stop being poor if the rich are willing to become even richer at a slower rate. That statement is perhaps even more apt today than it was in 1966. According to a recent article by George Grundy, the coronavirus pandemic has been kind to most of America's roughly 600 billionaires, who saw their combined net worth grow by 434 billion, 15%, in around 60 days. If the world's billionaires used their resources to eliminate poverty worldwide, which economist Jeffrey Sachs estimates would cost about $175 billion per year for 20 years, they'd still be billionaires at the end of it. "There is nothing new about poverty," wrote Dr. King. "What is new, however, is that we now have the resources to get rid of it." He continued, "The well-off and the secure have too often become indifferent and oblivious to the poverty and deprivation in their midst. Ultimately, a great nation is a compassionate nation. No individual or nation can be great if it does not have a concern for the least of these." Eradicating racism, the second evil, was the focus of the work for which Dr. King is best known. For him, racism was based on a contempt for life, centering one race while insisting that all others are devoid of value, except insofar as they might be of use to those in power. "Racism is total estrangement," he wrote. "It separates not only bodies, but minds and spirits. Inevitably, it descends to inflicting spiritual and physical homicide upon the outgroup." He understood his work for racial equality in the United States within a larger context of other freedom revolutions all over the globe. The great masses of people are determined to end the exploitation of their races and lands. These developments should not surprise any student of history. Oppressed people cannot remain oppressed forever. I once saw a performance artist named Keith Hennessy, this was decades ago now, who introduced his piece by saying that he was going to try and get free. And I was so unprepared for such a statement that I almost doubted my ears. But as his body moved with the music, I could see and feel him shed more and more layers of constraint. Not from thrashing about, but from becoming more and more fully himself. Before my very eyes, I watched someone inhabit freedom. However fleetingly, he'd created a space for his queerness, his fey gender bending, his whiteness, all of it, to move as one. The third triplet, militarism, was something that Dr. King became more vocal about later in his life, and he received quite a bit of criticism for it as well. But he'd seen the traumatic impact of the Vietnam War, both on the Vietnamese people and on the black soldiers who came home with bodies and spirits broken. A nation that continues year after year to spend more money on military defense than on programs of social uplift is approaching spiritual death, he wrote. One day we must come to see that peace is not merely a distant goal that we seek, but a means by which we arrive at that goal. We must pursue peaceful ends through peaceful means. Now, the idea of trying to dislodge poverty, racism, and militarism seems daunting. One of the places I find hope, though, is in the fact that we can experience the beloved community even before we completely dismantle the triple evils. For example, I'm moved by the story that Jesse told today of the people of Jayakufa coming together after the sudden death of a young father. Their process of identifying and redistributing the work he did has a practical component, obviously, but it also serves to memorialize the young man's roles in the community, the lives he touched, the responsibilities he took on, the places he'll be missed. He was woven throughout the community's fabric, and even in his absence, his daughters and sister were still held by that same fabric. Several years ago, I was attending Finding Our Way Home, an annual gathering for UU religious professionals of color. And at one of the last sessions, we held a child dedication for a little girl I'll call Z. She was probably about 18 months old at the time, and she had been charming absolutely everyone in the preceding days. Z was pretty much made of sunlight and delight. At the dedication, both of her parents stood with her, as did several members of their chosen family. And as the community offered Z our blessing, people couldn't stop grinning. And then something even more magical happened. Someone started singing this beautiful song by Shoshana Jedwab, based on a text from the Book of Ruth. Where you go, I will go, beloved. Where you go, I will go. Where you go, I will go, beloved. Where you go, I will go. For your people are my people. Your people are mine. Your people are my people. You're divine, my divine. People brought in harmonies. We added claps and moved our bodies. Z's parents held her and spun her around as she soaked it all in. We kept cycling through the song over and over and over, and tears welled up and rolled down cheeks. It was so clear in that moment that we were claiming that little girl, that we were making promises to her, that her people would always be our people as well. We'd woven her into our fabric and committed ourselves to holding her there. In doing so, we strengthened the weave of our fabric as well. It was one of the most joyful, most profound experiences of my entire life. We had built the beloved community, and it was extraordinary. It felt like ultimate connection. It felt like elation. It felt like freedom. Can you feel into that with me? Where you go, I will go, beloved. Where you go, I will go. Imagine someone you know grinning from ear to ear with utter delight. Where you go, I will go, beloved. Where you go, I will go. Now, picture a room full of friends and family whom you love dearly. I often think about the moment when Emily and I walked into our wedding reception and the waves of love that flowed around and over us. For your people are my people, your people are mine. Feel in your bones that you're in a place of authenticity and ease and justice and life, united by dreams and forces greater than any single person in the room, but applied equally to every person in the room. Your people are my people, your divine, my divine. Sing it with me. Where you go, I will go, beloved. Where you go, I will go. Where you go, I will go, beloved. Where you go, I will go. For your people are my people. Your people are mine. Your people are my people. Your divine, my divine. For your people are my people. Your people are mine. Your people are my people. Your divine, my divine. Remember that expansive and connective joy, because it is fundamental to the beloved community that we're striving to build. And if you didn't find it in this particular song, that's okay. Try a different song, or a poem, or an image, or a glorious tree, or a canopy of stars, or a dance that gives you the taste of freedom. May each of us find those glimpses of the beloved community, and may we also find it together. Amen, and blessed be.
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Friends, there is nothing stopping us from building the beloved community right here and right now. We have everything we need: abundant love, expansive joy, a deep-seated sense of justice, and a covenant resilient enough to hold it all. So, let us dive deep into this sacred work with courage and with kindness, that we might be a blessing to the world. Amen, Ashe, and blessed be.